Okay, well look what we have here. We have another guest. How do we keep doing this, Fedor? I don't know.
I don't know, man. It's a mystery, They're just popping on the
They
Discord,
just pop up
randomly,
like magic, you know. But today we have a
Magic.
wonderful guest. Our first guest from Germany. We have KiwiBri, also a Twitch streamer. Check out her streams if you're interested to learn about art
Hello.
and other things.
Right. And beautiful. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation. Hi.
Right.
So,
So you wanna start, bro? You're
yeah,
you're very
I'm gonna start.
Go
I'm head
ahead,
of a
go ahead,
good,
brother.
relationship right now. Kiwi, could you please introduce yourself and what do you do? Where you come from in Germany, and why Twitch? You know.
Okie dokie. Hi. I'm Kiwi. I'm from Germany. I'm an illustrator, and I just started working as a self-employed artist, and I'm currently 31 years old. And why Twitch? Cause I don't know. Why Twitch? I kind of went through different changes with Twitch. I started just doing it for video games and stuff. Um, but then I kind of changed my mindset about it, like coming from I'm a Twitch streamer to rather being an artist who sometimes streams on Twitch. There's a kind of difference between those two mindsets. But yeah, I stream art on Twitch, and sometimes, very rarely, video games.
Damn,
Interesting.
perfect. A funny detail you mentioned in your intro was your age.
Yeah.
That's a very, very interesting thing because let's say in China or in Russia, it would be a big trouble, or not a trouble, a problem to ask a girl for her age.
Oh, I
It's like
see. I see.
they're gonna hide it, gonna pretend that I'm
And
younger or whatever.
this is a perfect topic. I've actually been meaning to talk to a woman about this because personally, I actually think that the fact that women try to hide their age is like a remnant of the patriarchy, right? It's actually, I mean, when I ask women why they hide their age, they give all sorts of reasons, but there's very few who could explain, this connection. So maybe you have an opinion on it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on the fact that it's from, living in a patriarchy as a woman. Because women, well, mm, I guess the thing is that people like to believe that the older a woman gets, the less desirable she is. When it comes to like being perceived as a partner, a potential partner, but also in the work environment, it's very difficult to start in a new working space as a woman when you reach a certain age, and yeah, women aren't really allowed to age, and you're basically done when you see it, you know, as opposed to men, where I guess the common consensus is that men get more interesting as they age, and women just age.
And that's completely bullshit. I gotta tell you, I've been seeing this lady. She's 35, and I gotta tell you that she is perfect. She's even better than my 20. I'm 21, getting 22 in August. They're better than my, peers. So that's completely bullshit. Even from appearance, maybe, she's not gonna look like a 22-year-old, right? But body-wise, it's a completely different story. But of the point, and if she's gonna watch it, I love you.
That's nice. I mean, I totally agree with that. Like that concept is just ancient and bullshit, and it doesn't really make sense when you think about it, because I, I don't know. For both genders, the older you are, the more interesting you become because you have more more things you went through in life, and you have more to say, and you know. So that's my opinion on that.
Absolutely. And if let's put it another side, right? If employers are trying to find some young fresh blood talents, right? Disregarding the already like adults who have experience or might have some experience. I feel like our millennials are like my age. They're like doomed to fail in this game because like not only they've been watching TikTok a lot, which is another topic, you know, I don't know if you do it, but it's fine. Or just they're not as I mean they might be creative and stuff, but they're not as like mature in our days, you know. I think like people like older generations were much mature in when they were like I don't know 21, 22, you know, and now kids they're like completely how are they gonna compete, you know, how they're gonna, you know, keep up this corporative culture, you know, culture of a company. It's like to me it's such a nonsense that people are getting like filtered and sorted out based on their age. It's just so stupid. I mean, obviously, if you're like 45 or even not 45, 45 is a joke too. It's like when you're like 80 or something. Because people in their like 60s, 70s are now looking like they're looking good, you know. Not all of them, but some people, you know. And they still can perform the same actions, you know. People, they're learning how to use phones nowadays. So it's, you know, all of those concepts luckily are dying out. That's my point.
What you said about maturity and that I guess people who are in their 20s now are much less mature than the generations before us. I guess that just stems from growing up in the time of peace and growing up in a world of abundance and where we have too much, and you just basically grow up very securely in most of times. Not for everybody, but in most time, you know, in most cases you grow up securely and you don't have that much to worry about and you have more time to focus on yourself because you are not required to start working at the age of
Right.
13 or something, you know, just like how it used to be. And you have way more options. But having more options just results in, I guess, being more confused and
Absolutely.
needing more time to figure out what you want to do. And the generations before us, or like my parents, they didn't have that. They just did school and then they went on their first job and kept it on as long as possible.
Right, absolutely. Having more options. Yo, Tarik, what do you think about more options causing you more stress?
You know, that's a great
Oh,
point.
yeah.
But you know, even before that, I would also like to add that media consumption is also a big factor, right? In the old days, they had way less things to watch. I mean, this plays into the same idea of choices, but the fact that nowadays, you know, there's literally a device that will show you whatever you want at all times, it causes people to be distracted from creating their own goals. They see what someone else is doing and they either want to just watch that or they want to just do it exactly the same.
Right.
So I think that's a big factor as well. When you think about like how do we train these younger kids to realize that okay, I can watch all this stuff, but I have to be responsible with what I watch. That is, I think, is the challenge of the future.
Right.
And that's partially why I'm doing this podcast. You know, as I'm getting older, you know, I'm used to being the oldest person. You know, there's no shots being fired here, but I realize like I need to be the one who's, you know, if I believe that people need to be educated, then I need to be the one who's doing it. Live by example. So that's why I do this as opposed to, you know, I don't know, more trolley stuff or whatever. But yeah, so that's my take on it.
You know, and I just want to add also that more options is not necessarily always a good thing, but a good thing is that you can try a lot of stuff here. You know, you can become an illustrator, you can be a podcast host. You know, it's like we have more options, and those options can lead to new careers, you know, new paths that you might try and then, you know, make some money out of it, make a living. So it's a good transition point to why were you an illustrator before Twitch, or how long have you been doing it, or it's like a new gig of yours? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I went to university and studied graphic
Right.
design. And while studying that, I already knew that I didn't want to go into advertising or work in an advertising agency or something like that. Because I had like trainee experience in that field, and I just found out for myself, no, that's not for me. But I kept on studying it to the end anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about having choices and not knowing what exactly to do with your life, I struggled a lot with that after I graduated from university, because from one day to another, I was expected to head in a direction and know what I wanted to do. And so for at least 3 years after finishing university, I was kind of lost and depressed, and I didn't know what to do because I could do this or that or this other thing. And so I took on several different jobs to find out if this is a thing. But one thing I had to accept in my journey, that no is an answer too. Like if you come to the decision that this is not for you, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So it just narrows down what you want to do by the end of the day. And with Twitch, that's actually interesting that you said that social media makes you kind of see different directions you could go into. Because yeah, I started streaming because other people were streaming, and I thought it's maybe a good idea. It could be something I could do too. And that's why, as I mentioned in my introduction, my approach to Twitch kind of changed, because at first I was trying to do what other people were doing, and now I'm just trying to do it in a way that's working for me personally.
Right, right. And wow, I just had a conversation with an old friend of mine from Russia. You know, I met him here in Hangzhou, and we were discussing the value of higher education, and especially the fact that a lot of people who are now getting a degree in a field might not be necessarily keep like researching or working in the same field, you know. But it's quite a bit different with your case. It seems like that higher education plays a big role in your life in terms of the solid foundation that you have, right? So was it like worth it to go and study?
Oh, definitely. I mean, even if I don't use the things I learned there on a personal level for my personal development as a human being, it was absolutely worth it, and I wouldn't change anything about it. I would still do it.
Right. But I have a very interesting question to both of you guys. Do you think if it's even possible to go to a school or a university and be taught exactly the skills that you need to, you know, make money to work, or it's gonna be 70% of nonsense like math here and 30% of like, you know, some graphical things, or it's gonna be 100% or 90%, 95%? Do you think it's possible, Kiwi?
I'm not sure. Like if the question would be like, would you change something about the things you learned in university? Then now speaking, I would add a few certain things that were left out that I feel like, why didn't they tell us? Why didn't they teach us that?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, essentially, if I could change the things you learn in school, like way back, I would include just fundamental skills like how to make a phone call, how to order something, how to, I don't know, do your taxes. I mean, it's
How
very
to
specific.
express your feelings
How
to
you
a
express
girl
your
or a
yeah,
boy?
but you know, on an emotional scale, that too, but like just practical things that you need in life in order to, you know, function in this society, I guess, you know.
Right.
And we didn't learn that. We had, as you say, we had maths. Like, why?
Right. It's a joke. It's a
You know,
joke,
all,
you
all
know.
the all
And
the
I'm
mathematicians have left the chat. You know, it's never
Sorry,
my
I'm sorry. If you like maths, that's fine.
But
Yeah.
it's funny too because here in America they're trying to push STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They're trying to push it so hard, but the idea, I understand the idea, is that they want more people in those fields, and they want especially like minorities and disadvantaged communities into those fields. But what they don't understand is that it's just not the thing that most people can do. And it is interesting. It goes into this kind of idea of like if you start learning something from a young age, maybe that will translate as they get older as like, oh, okay, I used to do that when I was a kid, so that I can keep doing it. But I was actually super good at math when I was a kid. I was like, that was the one subject as a kid that I always did pretty well. But as I got older, I think the thing with math is that you start to see how impractical it is, which is very similar to what you were saying, Kiwi, about things that you actually need in life to just get by, especially if you're not really wealthy. So I stopped liking math. It stopped making sense. I got all the way to calculus 3 in school, in university, and by the end of it, I was just like, why? Why am I doing this? Why? That was a whole nother story because I went originally for computer science, but it was just a realization that even if I'm good at doing this, this is just not who I am. This doesn't build my personality at all, and I've never been one who's just going to chase something just for the potential career benefit of it. It's like, oh yeah, if you go into engineering, you're going to make lots of money, but I'm not going to be happy. So
Right.
that's my thoughts on that. But to bring it back to your question, things to change about school. I have a lot of opinions on this. I think from the beginning, I can accept that it's pretty hard to design education, right? Because the current idea, we know there's some flaws in how it's done, right? So first of all, the school matters, right? How much funding the school gets, the type of teachers the school has, all these things play into the overall result of the students. But not only that, but you have to give the students some a well-rounding. They need to have a taste of every subject because that's what builds the character, which people can decide what they want to do, right? If you've never done math at all, if they just allowed you to skip it, you wouldn't even know that that's something you could potentially do or something you might like. So I think that they need to keep that. But what they do need to do a better job, similar to what you're saying, Kiwi, is help people understand themselves in school. I
Right.
think in particular, I mean, I can't really speak to. I mean, I've only been to a few countries, and I haven't learned, and I haven't even talked to a lot of people in those countries about like how their schooling was. But I think in America in particular, we do a fairly good job of helping people figure out what they want to do, but we just it's almost like we just drop it. After a certain point, it's just like, okay, you should know now, and that's it. There's no continuous discussion. There's not a lot of counseling. A lot of schools, especially in lower income areas, don't even have any access to counseling, career counseling. So these are the kind of issues that I think lead to those problems. But I think for the most part, I think universities do a fairly good job. Maybe I'm playing the devil's advocate here, but I think for the most part, schools do a good job. But I think again, it's like we're going into a new era, and a lot of the administrators are very old, and they're very slow to catch up to how things are changing for people. So I think that's where the issue is. But, give it 10, 15 years when people are more used to the internet, when people are more used to social media, and maybe we'll see a change.
Exactly, exactly. And luckily, we've been, observing this change because, like, a lot of, these private institutions, like, in a form of lectures or, like, public courses, they provide this access to really practical skills. And if they're gonna get accreditation by the government, that means, or not just even that, it all comes to the employers who are hiring those people, and if they're gonna see the value in those, not official institutions, that's gonna bring also a big change, which a lot of employers have been doing in companies. You're like looking at your portfolio instead of your diploma color, right? And the title on it. So I guess the internet is changing a lot of things right now, and hopefully, we're not gonna be struggling, as like myself as a student, and well, it all comes down to my own problems, right? Why did I go to that like faculty and so on and so forth? But a lot of students been feeling like the same way. I have like a 20th student in my class, so it's like if they were doing something that they really like to do, like computer science, I've been seeing people doing that, or just marketing or other skills, right? Other stuff, drawing, illustrating. It would be more, I guess, proficient. Not in terms to the society, but for the society as well, because it's gonna just diversify the scope of people, right? We're gonna see more talents, right? More potential, and more potential in them. But another problem is the unknown factor is also very high. What kind of jobs are going to be in demand in the next like 10, 15 years? And starting from school, even though let's say you are going to be a telegraphist, an engineer with telegraph, but we all know that that job has already died, and it died in the matter of so my friend's mom, she used to do that job, and now the job is gone because we all have cell phones. So it's really hard to predict. So I guess people with the institutions at least can kind of synchronize with the market, the current market, and then try to navigate this current, because otherwise it's just gonna be a whole fucking mess and a lot of wasting of time and money.
Actually,
But I'm
I
sorry
have
for my long
question
rants. Yeah,
for
go
you
ahead.
guys. So I have family in UK, and when I had my degree, they all were a bit like wondering, well, why don't you apply to this job or that job? And in the UK, it's as long as you have a degree, you are actually free to choose whatever job you just want to start with. So as long as you have a degree, they might employ you. In Germany, if you didn't study the specific thing that this job is related to, no chance at all. So how is that in your countries?
Yo,
That's a
Brits
perfect
have been
question.
doing that shit. Yo, shout outs to British people right there.
We gotta bring back another UK guest. You gotta talk specifically about this. But no, that's
Wow.
actually super interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. In regards to your question, yeah, here in the U.S., it's kind of chaos. I'm famously quoted of saying that the U.S. is the chaos country. Like we're literally you could say it's true in some cases, and then literally you go a state over and it's not true. So I would say
yeah, I
that especially in our big cities, that it's leans more like that, where your degree should be in the field that you're going for. But in other places, it might be like, oh, you did journalism, but journalism and marketing, that's kind of close. Yeah, all right, come on. We just need somebody, who's
Yeah.
educated. So that's
Right.
that's that.
Some adjacent, fields of studies, right? But in China and Russia, I mean, in China it would be it's going to be a whole mess if it was the thing, You have to be, accredited with a certain, just title there. Oh, you are an engineer, or you're like a manager. And but again, it also really depends on your skills. Like for coding, for example, right now it's like you literally don't really need to have a diploma. I mean, it would be more, presentful, but at least if you have some portfolio, if you have some experience, that you may be hired by a company. I don't know. But for some position in the government, or just any, literally, I don't know. A lot of things are gonna depend, because it's the first requirement that a bachelor degree or above. That's it. And it's like, to me, for example, right now is, let's say after I'm going to do an internship for a month in a camp, and if I find out I'm actually good at teaching kids. You know, I might want to apply for a master program, let's say here in China or in some other countries. They might want me to have that, you know, education background in the first place. So even in this regard, it would be difficult, you know, to make a, you know, a giant leap from here to there. So I think this whole system has to be changed. But Tarik, obviously, you have something to say about it.
I just think it's funny, because I would just say that China seems like they're really trying to hold on to this system, and because it's like a kind of remnant of the past, and that seems to be kind of a theme in China. It's like all this stuff that's going on in the rest of the world, trying to be progressive. It's like, no. China will be China forever. You're not going to change.
Exactly. But a lot of people, been hearing criticism about Russia as well. Lately, today, I was like, hear this guy always complaining. It's like, yo, now we have to fucking do this vaccine. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to enter like restaurants, public transportation in some areas. Now we have a whole state, which is oblast in Russian, in a lockdown. So it's like people are not getting vaccinated. They don't want to. It's just a lot of conspiracy shit going on. So, in regards to the values, right? I would be more interested in asking about what is the current, not political, but like value system in Germany. Are we trying to hold for the past values, or are we trying to be more progressive?
I think with our politicians, we're kind of in the in-between, because German politics aren't really progressive or aggressive in the sense of like, we're going to change our country now, we're going to make everything better. Like, I think people are very, they just sit on their bums. I have the feeling like there's not really going on much change, and I think that can be seen in the whole COVID situation. I've been trying to get the vaccine for weeks now, and I just can't get it because we don't have enough. And that's because people really just screwed up with the whole COVID situation and stuff, because Germany as a country, with the way the government works, is just not flexible enough. And I think that could be also translated to our school system and to a lot of things that just need to be renewed and reformed, basically. So as progressive as I think our mindset is, like as a country, I don't see that in the way our country is governed.
Okay. And I have also a quick question. So most of our audience, we have like maybe 2 or 3 people who always watch, but most people, even for myself, don't really understand how the German education system is. So I'll just give a brief, in America, we go, I don't even know the ages, but we start in kindergarten and we go to 12th grade. And then after 12th grade, you can choose if you want to go to like a small community college or a university. And then after that, you can go get a master's program. So that's like the basic thing. But in Germany, it's a little different. If you could just tell us.
Yeah, sure. So they changed it a few years ago. So I had 13 years of education altogether. But we start with going to kindergarten around the age of 3 to 4, I think. And kindergarten just basically means you go there to play. And you don't have any really education. It's not like preschool or anything. So you learn how to socialize and that stuff. And then from ages 6 to 10, you go to elementary school. And but after elementary school, that's when people get divided. So there are currently 3 forms of school, of following up, like junior high school. And it's basically, it's based upon how well you did in elementary school. So if you were like really good, you would go to the highest form of junior high school, which basically also means that you go and take your A levels. I don't really know what that is for America or for Russia. Um, and that's I went to the middle form for those who are good in some classes but are bad in other classes, and you go to the middle one. Or if you go to, well, if the teachers think you're not smart enough for either of those forms, you go into the third form, so that's
Right.
I think that's so messed up to decide, when you're 10 years old, if you're smart, if you're okay, or if you're dumb. That's because that's what it basically means. And then you have, one of those three options. And I transferred to the highest form after at 16, when I was done with junior high, and took on 3 more years of education to then go to study. So that's roughly the German school system.
And
Right.
I think so. I'm getting this information because I had a German professor at some point, and he was explaining it to me. I don't remember it that well, but I think there is also like some vocational schools, so like mechanics or construction. There's more of that. Is that true?
Yes, true. Yeah, exactly. So after junior high, you can either continue your studying in a normal school and take the A lessons, or you go into that specific school that you just said and have like a different version of that education, but it's more specialized in the
Yeah.
job you later want to be
Yo,
in.
we have the same. We call it colleges. That was
Oh
the
yeah.
one confusing. You call it the same college, like in Russian, technically, a university and a college. It's a two different system, So to add a little bit of Russian spice here, I would say that we get this division in the 9th grade, and we only have 11 grade system, basically 11 classes. We call it by
Yeah.
class, from the first class all the way to the 11th class. So from like at the class 5, we start this, like basically a division. It's like a junior school, and my brother recently just got into a mathematical class, which he had to take a test, and it's either going to be math or some like Russian, for example. And in the class 9th grade, basically, you would have to take also an exam, because after 9th grade, you can go to a college to be a mechanic, to be a, I don't know, wherever, and like it's gonna take you probably 2 or 3 years, and you're gonna have a degree, and then you can apply for a job. But more and more people are deciding to stay and go all the way up to 11th grade. Then they take like the final exam, plus the few other, also exams. So Russian and math is like obligatory. All people have to take it, and then it depends on your university, the requirements. If you want to be a physicist, you're gonna pass like advanced math, physics. That's it. Or biology is gonna be medicine, biology, and chemistry. So that's how we get divided, And probably the same system, right? Like in Germany.
Yeah,
Right.
kind of, yeah. So after grade 10, you would then decide if you want to, go further to school, or if you want to
Right.
go in that direction that is college for
Right.
you. We call it Berufsschule, which is like job school. So it really, really specializes in the job you want to make and educates you.
Right, yeah. You guys have probably an extra class, right? An extra grade. We have 11,
Yeah.
11 classes. You guys probably
Yeah,
have 12.
I-
In
I
America, you
think-
also have 12, right?
Yeah,
I
we
think
have
we
12.
have 12. I had 13 still, and then they changed it after I graduated.
Damn.
So, yeah, they're shortening the school time, which is cool. Yeah.
13 years of that school. God damn, I was finishing my high school in China. Remember, Tarik? I was making all the subjects online, and then had to go back, take this, what is ЕГЭ, Единый государственный экзамен, universal exam,
Government.
basically, government examination. So, and I only had to take 2 classes, very really basic Russian and basic math. And then I got, because Chinese universities, they're not required to have you either like, physics or civil class passed, so which was great. But is it like the same in Germany? You have to like, is there a final like exam to, or how do you guys get into universities? What is the system?
Yeah, we do have a final exam. We call it Abitur. And depending how well you do, you can apply to the field you want to study in. For example, for medicine, of course, it's much higher. You have to do really, really well. Almost, you have to do perfectly to be able to apply to studying medicine.
Right. And you would have to take like, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, like you would have to take all subjects like physics, chemistry, history.
And
You know.
throughout your school time, you get to choose what you want to do. For example, you can choose between if you want to go in the science direction or if you want to go into the language direction. So I chose, for example, I had French instead of continuing to take on chemistry. So until the grades 5 and 6, you get a basic education in every field, and then you get divided in whether you're more talented in languages or science, basically.
The school shit,
Yeah.
chemistry was the worst class, worst. I like literally, I don't remember what was the last time I had to solve, those puzzles, with like elements and shit, draw the lines. It was like, oh, please. And we only had like a few experiments, when they're like put something on fire, add some nitrogen, create a dynamite. No, never, never.
I was also
I
really
always-
bad in chemistry, but that also comes down. A thing that I would like to mention is because we had a very bad teacher in chemistry who wasn't qualified enough to teach kids because they would always be angry and shouting and stuff. So coming back to what we want to change about the school system, make sure you educate the right people for actually becoming a teacher. Because a lot of people that I went to school with, they decided to just study German and do teaching, and where I was really surprised because I wouldn't have, I didn't necessarily think that person would make a good teacher. So
Exactly. Yo, Tarik, I'm in the chat. That's your topic.
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to look at this, right? Well, so let's start with this because this will eventually tie into one of the first topics I definitely want to talk about, which is about wealth and money and how that affects things. Here in the United States, it's pretty well known that our teachers are paid pretty low. Their salaries are very low, and I think that plays into how they teach, right? If you're struggling basically just to survive with the money that you make, it's going to be hard to have patience for kids who sometimes don't care about what you're saying and things like that. So teaching is a very hard job, that's for sure. But at the same time, I absolutely 100% agree with you that if you're going to go into teaching, for me, it's almost the same as being a doctor. And just like how you said doctors have to be perfect, I believe teachers have to be too. You have to really be passionate about it. You have to really care about what you're doing because you have so much
Right.
influence. I think
agree.
so many people are, especially young people, are the reason why they're not really looking for educational content is because they've had teachers who either made them feel like they'll never be smart or just like that they don't really matter, and thus they associate education with a negative experience. Like, oh, someone's just going to lecture me. Oh, someone's just going to do this. And this is not fun. I'll never be able to use it. So, and it's not 100% the teacher's fault. Again, I'm going to be speaking about America. I don't know the systems of other countries, but here, our educational governing body is very strict with curriculum. I mean, they don't force teachers to teach in a certain way, but they heavily restrict what can be taught and how it's taught. So
Yeah.
it can be really rough. And this is how does this relate to wealth? I want to ask, how is money kind of distributed in Germany? Here in America, it's well documented that the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer. But we also have a different kind of business culture, I think. So maybe enlighten me if you know anything about how money works in Germany.
I would say it's almost the same. Um, in the city where I live in, there is pretty much no middle ground. Like the way I see it, we have very, very poor people living here, which makes the city affordable. Um, but at the same time, if you go around the corner, then you'd have like mansions. And the contrast in the city I live in is very crass and very visible. So I would actually think it's pretty much the same over here too.
Mm.
Right, but
Well,
we don't have to, it seems like I would believe if I was not from Russia, I would believe that it's really much the same, but you also have to compare the level of poorness people, like what is like to be poor in Germany and Russia or in America.
True, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
is it like a
yeah.
good like social like this social system where if even if you get bankrupt or poor, still the government or like people or you can basically sustain your life on a level, and not die.
Yeah. Um, so I guess the biggest difference would be that Germany offers you lots of options before you really end up not having anything, not having um, shelter to live in or something like that. Because we are actually quite, secure in that sense. If you lose your job, you can apply um, to get financial support, but you have to do a certain steps to get there. And I think some people don't want to take the steps necessary to have that support.
Mm-hmm.
So where I live in my city, we have lots of homeless people too. Um, and then I always, ask myself, well, why don't they go to the government and take the steps they need? Because it is a possibility. Anyone can do that and get help. So I don't know why they don't, but maybe that's because I just don't know enough about it. But yeah, I've been in a situation where I needed governmental financial support, and I took that step, and it sucks. It's not a nice thing to do because you feel like
Like
a
shit,
failure.
right?
Yeah, you feel absolutely like shit, and they treat you like shit too. Um, but yeah, we have those possibilities.
hmm, that brings
But
up
can you
another
still
point.
live on that minimum like money, like unemployment benefit that they send you, like monthly or like weekly? Is it like
Yeah,
possible to sustain your life?
it is
Right.
possible. It kind of depends on where you live. But we have like what two different levels of support. Like if you just lose your job, you get like a substitute for the money you would make, a percentage of the money you had made in your job before. And then if you
Wow.
are, yeah, that lasts for about, it depends on how long you've worked. If you've worked for 2 years, you get 1 year of that financial support in hopes of that you, of course, find a new job within your own power.
Right.
But if you go over that time period, you you kind of slide into the second level of financial support, and they would also help you pay to pay your rent, which they don't do on the level one. So if you, for example, have like a really, really expensive apartment, you would have to move into a smaller apartment because they only pay for a different amount of rent. I know it's a bit difficult. Like Germany is very, very, it's I don't know, bureaucratically, it's up here. It's it kind of can get very complicated and it's just a lot. But yeah, you
Yeah.
can you can survive for a certain period on governmental funds.
Yeah, I would say that that's somewhat similar with America. I can't. I have to be honest. I'm not that familiar with how unemployment works. I actually did apply for unemployment at the start of pandemic, and I didn't get it. So,
Oh,
it's weird, right? Because here in America, at least during the pandemic, right? Normally, maybe it's different, but because we had so many people applying, that
yeah.
there was a lot of stories about how long it took to get a response, how many people didn't
Right.
receive unemployment. Yeah, but there's also stories that now people are receiving so much unemployment that they don't want to go back to work. I don't know.
Yeah, I get
Yeah,
that.
actually, I
I mean,
wanted to ask that. Go
we
ahead.
have those cases too. We have those cases too where people just stay in the level two um, sector and just don't. Yeah, they live off the state and live off other people's tax money because they. I mean, on one hand, I can understand that because if you have to choose between uh, doing, staying at home and getting the money, or doing a very, very shit job and getting possibly even paid less. I mean, what would you do? The smart choice is to stay at home, you know, because it's just not worth it. For some people, it's really hard to get a job, and if the only option for you is to, I don't know, get below minimum wage, then, do what you gotta do to survive, I would say.
Yeah, universal basic income has entered the chat,
Yeah.
that
Oh, hell
discussion.
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
again, we have explored this a little, me and Fedora. We found out that it doesn't always work in
Yeah.
some cases that have been tested. But I think the idea itself is kind of good. And in some ways, I would even argue that we're already doing it, right? Let's think about it this way. We have the internet, we have YouTube, which pays people to make content. Making content for a lot of people is something that's a possibility. However, obviously for a lot of people it's not. And this content, it's judged by the denizens of the internet, whoever wants.
Uh,
So essentially, we're already kind of testing the idea of, oh, just be yourself in front of a camera and maybe you can get some money for that. So this is like the early stages. Now, if it wasn't based on how many views or how many subscriptions you get, and instead it was basically just a subsidization from the government, there's something to that, right? There's a little bit. It seems like, oh yeah, why doesn't the government just, if whether subsidize YouTube so that more people can get YouTube money? It incentivizes people to want to do something besides the traditional labor stuff, right?
right.
So I think there's still something to it. And again, that idea is still very new. So, it
Damn.
makes sense that more
That's
people
a
need
good
to.
that's a good point, As I started thinking about it, it's like people are just gonna be doing only that. Like more and more people are gonna discover eventually the way like, wow, I'm a good cook, I can play my guitar and make some money out of it, be a real like artist in some sense, right? So
You went from cook to guitar. It's like, what? Bro. But
But right
no,
now,
that's
as you
funny.
said that, I just immediately had the vision of a kind of post-apocalyptic society where it's just about making content and no matter what content, and the more content you make, be it as stupid or good as it is, and you'll just get paid for
Is
that
that
every
really
minute, every
post-apocalyptic?
minute.
When I go on
oh,
TikTok,
it's
I'm like, yo, we are living in post-apocalypse
oh
already.
exactly. Yo,
I mean, we are.
content right
Yeah,
now.
we are already consuming so much, and so much of what we consume is bullshit. But just think of that what we have now, but even more, like in extreme. I know that for example in China, there are these whole building complexes that are just designed for Twitch streamers or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
they kind of educate them on
Right,
how to do that, live streaming.
right. This is so insane. Am I still here right now?
Yeah, you're still here. You're still here.
Yeah. I'm like, yo,
Don't
goddamn,
worry,
this
they
podcast,
didn't they
That's what
didn't
I'm.
pull you off the
That's what
internet
I'm
yet.
at. Nobody knows that, But I've been working for the government here, They're paying me, because I have never left this room, all throughout this time, I've been sitting right here, They allowed me to put this beautiful flag on the wall, but it's still a joke, Uh, content that we consume. Basically, content has become new religion, a new currency nowadays, you know. And not only for the profit wise, yo, with your girlfriend, with your friends, you always have to consume some content in order to have a discussion. It used to be, it has been like that, but it was not as gigantic, you know, and widespread as it is right now, right? Because literally every single thing, COVID is a good example, you know, despite like it's been real and shit, even though not all people are agreed to this fact, but so much content it has produced over this 2 years, right? A lot of people, vaccines, media, all, oh, it's a conspiracy. Now vaccines, it's just like, yo, so much content, so much discussion. So it's like, it's a new currency. That's why, like, more and more people are starting to fall into this, you know. And I personally agree. Because let's say if we were not making this podcast or, you know, constantly sending other, like, some, you know, cool videos about something, we would not be talking because there is nothing to talk about. You know, I have a lot of people in my VK, Russian social media, or even WeChat, Chinese social media, you know, not for their ads, you know, they didn't pay me shit for that. But, and only with a few I communicate because we consume something together. Oh, check this video out. Oh, I've heard about that. Let's talk about it. That's it. And now, all fucking social medias and people on there judge other people basically on the basis of their content. What content you consume and you don't. And if you don't consume that content, you're basically gonna be an underdog here, you know. So it's a new currency. God damn, that's a deep theory, you know.
It's a curse and a blessing at the same time. Because, as you said, like over the pandemic, I got to know so many different people just by being a member of a streamer's Discord. You know, just because that one person decided to stream, I got to know all these nice people that I'm now very good friends with. And so, yeah, consuming something can lead to very positive outcomes on the one hand, but also to, you know, I don't know, as you said, causing drama or something stupid on the other hand. So it's like a double-edged sword, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I feel like it's a live experiment of the human condition. It's like it shows, the internet to me shows everything humans are capable of, whether it be negative, you know, trolling, doxing, this kind of stuff, or whether it's positive, spreading, you know, facts and, you know, explaining phenomenons and things like that. So you get everything. But I guess the real question that everybody's wondering is, which is the net positive? Is it net positive? Is it negative? And I guess that's where we're going. But one particular thing, I'm doing a transition. One particular thing that I want to talk about is about beauty standards. So I was in a
body positive. Body positive.
That's right. You know, I was in another stream actually, and the idea was presented that there is a pretty privilege, right? So more attractive people are more likely to get, you know, whether it's money or recognition. And I was like, this is an interesting thing, right? For the most part, I agree. But then the streamer took it to a whole nother level. They were like, oh, you know, girls are not as powerful as boys when it comes to that. And I was like, wait, what? Like, no, like that's not the case. I think it works both ways. There are some guys who get a lot of attention because they look a certain way, and a lot of girls are attracted to it. And it's the same thing with girls. But she was saying that, oh no, guys don't have to look that good to get a lot of attention. So I'm wondering, what do you think, Bri?
That's a very complex thing. I think if a woman is attractive and successful on streaming or whatever media presence, she will, even if she is successful, she will always get shit from men and women, because in our society, women are also not let's say, trained to support one another, that's like a new thing, because amongst women, it's still very spread to be jealous of one another, you know. And I don't know how that is for men, but for women it can be very bad. So that girls are supposed to, you know, support girls with whatever they do. That's like a new concept, I think. So when men are attractive and on media, I think people tend to be more forgiving towards them than towards a woman.
That's a good point.
Because she will be called out for her bullshit, and I think people will dwell longer on that than they would dwell if a guy messed up. At least that's my experience from watching different streamers and having issues with different streamers. So yeah.
You know, I completely agree. And I was trying to make that point too. I said, you know, I think that women judge each other more harshly than men judge women. Now, this is a controversial take because, you know, I'm a man and blah, 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 blah. And I do agree absolutely that men are pretty harsh for the most part on women and how they look. However, there's also a lot of guys who look past it, you know, at the same time. You know, there's always going to be a spectrum of different opinions. But I would say that men tend to, even if they care about how they look, they just don't let it take over everything. You know, they don't let it stop them from doing something. Like, I know I'm not the most attractive guy. In fact, I've said several times, you know, I got a lot to work on in that category. But no matter how self-conscious I am about it, I can just value something else about myself and just let that, you know, be the judge. Whereas, again, I'm not saying all women are like this. Of course, there's lots of women who think the same way as me, you know, and they're like, yeah, I know I'm not the best looking, but I still have this to offer. I just think that the peer pressure from other women is a lot stronger in the female community than in the male community. Now, that could be controversial too, you know, I'm separating by sex, oh no, but just trying to
No,
make a point.
I agree, but that also, that, you know, that kind of mindset that women sometimes limit themselves to what they look like is also just proof that we're living in a patriarchy, and that women cannot see their own value unless they are pretty on the outside. Sometimes, like, you know, it's a whole self-development journey that they have to go through. Maybe more than men, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, I agree. You know, the only thing like I would bring up, because some people might say like, what is he talking about? Look at how many of those guys there are on YouTube who are telling you how to work out. Like, oh, bro, you got to do this. Oh, let me show you how to do the perfect workout program. You know, it's some guy who's like huge or whatever, and he's like, oh, this is how you do a bench press. It's like, how many of those guys do we really need, you know? But the reason is because there's a lot of guys out there who are like, oh, damn, I don't look like this guy. I have to look like this guy if I want anything. And I like I said, I was victim to that. You know, I'm not a big guy. I'm pretty slim, and I thought that was the only reason women weren't talking to me. But you know, obviously there's other reasons.
Luckily you realized that, because I realized for myself as well. Like literally today, as I stood on the scale, you know, I saw 71 kg and I was 80 kg, you know, all shit that I've been, you know, gaining, I lost because of my stomach, but it's for another topic. And guess what? Girls start to compliment me, saying, you had a fatter face before and now it's perfect. I had in my head, you know, it's like, yo, I've been working out just for your compliments. And now I realize it's not necessary. It was not necessary.
The thing is with working out and like bros who teach you to work out, what they basically teach you is how to be attractive in the male gaze and not in the female gaze. That's a whole other thing, because what those bros want you to be like, that's attractive for them. That's what makes them that you're like an alpha male or something. Like women are not necessarily attracted to that. Most of the time they are not. You know,
You
so
know,
that's very
and that's
interesting.
from
Yo.
propaganda, right? This is again about media consumption because it's not just that we see those guys only, but we also see ads with those guys with a very attractive girl. Always this pairing, and so that it becomes ingrained in the idea of like, oh, if I don't look like that guy, I'm not gonna get a girl like this. So yeah, it's
Yo, I start to think that all of them are gays, all of them. Just think about, you go in the gym and you start looking at the brawling guys, because usually that's the majority of them. That's the majority. And if you spend more time, big guys, especially in the shower room, in the locker room, when they're all naked, yo, it's not fair, This
No
guy
shame in
literally.
that.
yeah, no
Yeah,
shame
This
in
I
that.
guy,
Of
like
course.
it.
this guy literally was today standing, in front of the mirror, naked, and a few other people were looking at him. Or, I didn't know. I considered not. So I took a shower, came back, and they were still looking at him, and he was still standing. And it took me like 15 minutes.
I gotta ask, man.
Shower.
Can you give a little more context? Where was this happening?
The locker room in my gym.
Oh, okay.
So there's a gym that I go to, and I can take a shower there, and in that room, it's like a spacious room, but still a guy was standing. I don't know, he was trying to put his, I don't know, clothes on, but apparently it didn't work out for 15 minutes. So he was just standing, in front of the mirror, and the other guys were trying to take their clothes off. Yo, that was a fucking role game right there.
Oh, man. That's super funny. That's
Girls, do you have the same situation? Your locker rooms, this kind of guy, sitting in front of the mirror. No.
No, not really. So whenever I had like a few gym memberships, but I never went to the gym. But that's beside the point. I don't know. I think women's lockers room, they're always like everybody's just rushing to get in and out and have as little contact with anybody else as possible. That's from my experience.
Yeah, guys'
Luckily,
locker
you
room
guys-
is completely different, What
is.
happens
Yeah.
in guys' locker room is like, yo, bro, did you see how much I lifted? Yo, bro, it was insane, man. Yo, you're gonna beat that power ranking next game. It's like to be fair though, it's like it's actually pretty positive for the most part, which is kind of good because guys, we do. It's rare that we actually compliment each other about something. Most of the time we're competing, and there's a lot of poor sportsmanship in that case of like, oh, you didn't do it, so
Right.
you're this and that, and so it's good to see when guys are like, complimenting each other, but it's I think it's just funny to see, differences.
Right, exactly. Especially this kind of situation in locker rooms, But all right for showers and naked guys,
Yeah.
naked brawly guys.
So, all right. So
Brawly
another
guys.
thing I wanted to know is, so in Germany, I mean, where you are, we're not going to specify, but I've always wondered, like, I see German soccer teams, in the NBA, we have very few German players, but one of the only German players, his name is Dennis Schroeder. He's a black guy. He's originally from, I don't know, Nigeria, I think. And on the German soccer team, I've seen black players. So I'm wondering, how diverse is Germany? Obviously, we're not going to go with statistics, like I said, but just in your, wherever you are, how often do you see people from other places?
So where I live, I'm comfortable with saying that I live in the western part of Germany, in like the middle western part of Germany. And where I live, we have lots of people living here. The density of population, as opposed to other areas in Germany, is very, very high. So we have lots of diversity in all our big cities, I would say. If you go out to the more rural areas, it can be different. But especially in the place where I live, we have lots of Turkish and Arabic people living here. We have lots of, people from other European countries living here. And in the next bigger city, which is like 20 minutes by car, we have very high Asian a lot of Asian people living there. So it's very diverse where I live.
Is there a lot of Chinese people in your area?
Not in my city. But in, like I said, in the next big city, there is, yeah, lots of Chinese and Japanese people. Yeah.
That's good to hear, at least for me. So as you know, Kiwi, I've been considering moving to Germany, whether it's for
Yeah.
studies or just to live in another country. I had a lot of preconceptions based on my past experiences, which, to be honest, again, I had a lot of positive images of Germany. I thought, you guys take a lot of refugees. I admired the education system. You kind of shine a light on it now, and now I'm thinking, yeah, maybe it's not that good to separate people from such a young age. But I guess I saw an idealized version of Germany. But what I want to get into more is, do you think it's a comfortable place for immigrants to move to? Is it easy to assimilate? For the most part, are Germans kind to foreigners, or?
Mostly, yeah. So if you stick to the biggest cities, I would suggest, because I don't know about the situation in like smaller villages, especially in the eastern part of Germany, where people just usually live a bit more isolated and don't necessarily have contact with lots of people from other countries and of other languages. So if you stick to the big cities, it should be fine. Like I mentioned before, Germany is a very bureaucratic country, so there will be some obstacles with filling out endless forms and other forms and all that stuff. But it's just basically for making sure that you really want to be here and that you have all the, yeah, that you are safe to stay here, that you have, um, what's it called? Like that you have a secure if something happens to you. So that kind of thing. Um, about the friendliness, it really depends on the area of Germany you come to. I would suggest Berlin. Berlin people are very, very open and are always there to have a chat. Whereas if you go to the northern part of Germany, people are more reserved. So in that aspect, either, oh, and he's gone, either come to the western part where I live or like Berlin.
Okay, that's good. That's very good to hear, because it's pretty similar in the US, I would say. I'm learning so much, I think a lot of the reason why I have these positive images is because I have a lot of negative images of the US, and I often get, biased, or let's say, yeah, our media is very powerful. So I often feel like, oh, America's a terrible place and blah, blah, blah. But, hearing these things helps me put it more into perspective. Just for people watching, I'm from New York City. I live in the New York area. And we have a big stereotype against New Yorkers, which is that we're rude people. We don't care about anyone, blah, blah, blah. It's the most BS, stereotype ever. In fact, New Yorkers are super nice, super friendly. But the problem is that a lot of people move to New York and they have this negative stereotype, and they think, oh, if I want to be a New Yorker, I have to act like this. And so they say, oh yeah, I'm from New York. How long have you been here? 2 years. It's like, oh, okay. A lot of people want to claim to be from New York, but it's not the case.
Oh yeah.
A lot of common things are everywhere, like it would depend really on your, yes, ambitions and like minimal requirements. This, like whenever you download a game to play, you have this limit, like minimal requirements, like your video
Yeah.
card and RAM, basically the same for different countries. It would be much higher or less higher, so it's like I can understand it. And Kiwi, have you lived in another country, or have you been to?
I've been on holiday in different countries, and I traveled to Sweden in 2019, the first time I ever traveled alone. I was there in
Nice.
Stockholm for a week. I unfortunately have not lived abroad yet. When I was in university, I applied for an exchange year, which didn't work out. They didn't accept me, and that's like the only regret I have, that I haven't experienced living abroad yet. But if I can realize myself as staying self-employed. And if that works out for me, I would definitely look towards living abroad for a year or two.
And where would you go?
I don't know. I think I would either maybe I would try UK, because I
Right.
mean UK is not as foreign to me because I have family there. With the whole Brexit thing, it's still to see whether that's really worth pursuing or not. And even though if you say, Tarik, you don't like the US, I would try for going into the US for a while and see how that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yo, come, please, please. We
It
need
is so
more.
it's
We
so
need more
so
people
so
like you here. We do.
so far away though, so far away, you know. A thing to consider is family, you know, family ties and how close or far away your family is from you. So currently I'm living like all the way 8,000 kilometers. So it's like 10 hours flight. Basically like from you to New York City. It would be probably around the same, right? Maybe 13 hours
No,
flight.
to New York, it's actually just 6 hours by flight from where I am.
Oh, really?
It's really not that far away, no.
Damn, so you can go there and come back, you know, and I would
Yeah,
still
pretty
be
much,
like
pretty much.
flying, you know, from Shanghai.
If it's the East Coast, it wouldn't be as much as an issue, like for staying in touch with family and visiting them, as opposed to if I decided to go to the West Coast. The West Coast would really be like that would be
Yeah,
a very, very big distance. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Man, I'm closer to the West Coast, you know, it's like, what, 10 hours probably, but it's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
far
yeah.
away.
Don't go over there though. California's a mess right now. Come to New York.
you know.
If you want a family, New York will give you a family.
I gotta provide it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Yo, there's another interesting topic that Tarik is craving to ask. Tarik, please, you know, now it's
Is
the
there?
time.
How do you know? How do you know?
Yo, the wealth has been
Yeah, we
on the
discussed.
top.
No, we discussed wealth a little bit. I mean, I didn't tell the story I wanted to tell, but I think the point was reached. What I wanted to say, but I do have one other thing, and this one is more of a philosophical, I guess, question. But I was thinking about the idea of character, people's character, right? Because I noticed that, and this is kind of like a internet phenomenon, but like people are so quick to judge one another these days, very quickly. Like you could be the greatest person ever to a lot of people, and then the second you say one thing that they don't like, oh, you're a this, you're that, they throw the IST at the end of it, fascist, racist, sexist, all these labels just come out of nowhere. And I just wonder if people have lost this idea of like people have certain characteristics about them which make them, for a better, for lack of a better word, good, right? This person is a good person, and just because they might have a certain opinion at a certain time doesn't make them automatically now a bad person. So I'm wondering if we could, as a group, come to a consensus on how do we define a person's character, or how do we show a person's character in these age?
I think a way to see that is to rather judge upon the person's actions, or the actions that they take after they have made a mistake. So if they show the willingness to agree that they maybe said something that wasn't necessarily good, or maybe even admit to that they did something wrong or said something wrong, and then learn from that, I think that says more about a person, because we talk a lot. Like, people talk a lot. You might sometimes they just make a mistake, and that's fine, because we're all human. We do make mistakes and we learn from that. But I think that's what makes the difference. If you're willing to change or to admit that you were wrong, then I think that's all you can do, basically. But I think
Exactly.
with all the hate that people get, is because a lot of people are just really, really bored with their own lives, and they really just cling to all the internet drama they can cling to fill that hole within themselves, because they don't know what to do with themselves. That's kind of my hot take on internet hate.
What do you
Right.
think, Fedor?
Yeah, and sometimes even if you need to make an apology in Chinese, it would be fine because you really feel into your problems, and your mistakes. Right, just some political
you're
stuff.
trying to trigger me, man. You're trying to trigger me. I'm gonna
It's just a
dodge that
good
one.
joke, man. It's like this.
A
This
good
one
joke,
came
bro.
up to my head, like, exactly. But again, but it's a good point though. It's like, what is the incentive behind it? Why you're like, if you're like a public figure and you did some fucked up shit, right? I don't know. You went to this private island of Epstein, or some other stuff, like Bill Gates.
I mean, that's like on a different level than saying maybe something stupid on the internet. If you fucked up really, really hard, then I don't know, maybe step away from being a public figure. Just live your
Right.
life.
That's a
Be
whole
happy,
even
but
other
just step
thing
away.
to talk about. The idea, like something I've always wondered. For example, like we're gonna throw this guy's name out there, Putin, right? He's been a leader for so long. He's done whatever he's done, whether you think it's good or bad for his country, for a long time. He has all the money he could ever need. Again, this doesn't only apply to Putin; it applies to a lot of people. I don't understand why those kind of people cling to the power. Just take what you have and just you can do anything else after you have done that. You have accomplished like the 0.0001% of things that can be accomplished in this world. Like, I really
By a
do
human
wonder.
being.
Yeah, I really do wonder, like, what makes those people like, no, I have to keep doing it. It makes me think, in particular, since I use Putin as an example, that there's definitely something, like, more information that we don't know. Like, let's say, for example, this is all speculation, but, like, I think Putin really thinks that what he's doing is for the good of the Russian people, regardless of politics or whatever.
Your beliefs, right?
I think his true belief, because we hear things being said about him left, right, and center. Oh, he's this, he's that, and as a person in the media, I understand that no matter what you do as a politician, there's gonna be a bunch of people who are gonna point something out and say, look at how bad you are for this and blah blah blah. But I just can't understand, or I don't support the idea that he's just an evil person who's just doing evil things because he can. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you can't be that smart, and Putin is a pretty smart guy, in my opinion, compared to some other people who I've seen reach that level of power. I just don't believe that, that's how simple it is.
Right. Maybe they just put their roots into this earth, it's like, and he imagines himself as a savior, for example, right? And it's like, whatever I'm doing for the good of the people, he has this intention. So maybe that's why, and he is in this mechanism, he has been in this mechanism for so long, and now it became like an obsession of like, who is gonna replace me now? Like this all... It's not only like a local governor, that's like, all right, never mind, man.
And to add on to this, before, Bree, because I know you want to talk, it's also about understanding the context of history. And this is, I think, the most important thing. This is why I brought up the idea of character, is because we need to understand the context in which people find themselves in those moments where they're criticized, right? Russia was literally created in 1991 when I was born. And that's because their whole country collapsed because of poor leadership. So if you came out of that era and you realized, like, all right, this country really needs something in particular, a certain type of leadership, in order to get it to the point where eventually someday, maybe Russia would look like a USA. But at this point in time, you have all these people grabbing for power with no remorse for the, what happens. And so maybe he really understands that on a level that a lot of us don't, as people who are outsiders.
I don't know.
Could be completely wrong,
maybe it's that it is his belief that he can turn everything to the better. But maybe it's just also that people get addicted to power, and that he just can't comprehend with any cell in his body that from one day to another he could be out of power and not control anything anymore. And maybe that thought for him is like really is torture, and he does anything he can possibly can to just remain in power until the day he dies. I don't know.
You're just speculating. I'm just gonna call him,
Go ahead.
directly. It's like, yo, man, it's been.
That was like
man.
the most fire joke you've ever told.
But it's actually, the idea just came to my head. It's like, that's why we need to have a mechanism, like democracy, for example, that is gonna protect, the system from those kind of people and we know that all humans are corrupt in some ways, like money stuff or power, authority, a lot of obsession and just a lot of stupid shit that people like to have, to do, to obtain, So that's why I guess a good mechanism is a good, protector, a good defender, a guard, against those kind of people, and I personally think that it's like it's been too long, and we need to have some changes, because this comfort zone that a lot of people in my country have, it's not only like he got to the throne with like, completely bullshit. No, a lot of people really think that he's the best, and I would say that the majority of people would think like those numbers are partially, of course, been kind of screwed in the process of election, but it's still a lot of people still think that he is the one who has to rule the country. But again, it's also about, we are talking about the characters, and now we are, as creators, are trying to build our own character, because we know how it could be different depending if you're like online and offline, your talking style, your attitude, your ability to speak Chinese, in front of the camera, and in real life you just can't, it's just just some jokes, right? So I don't know, really. It's a lot going on, and been doing this project. And what I'm more interested to talk about, honestly, and since we have some time left, is that a lot of people been doing art nowadays, illustrations, podcasting, I don't know, music, cooking, because I have a bad stomach right now. That's why I mentioned cooking so much, because I miss a lot of fried food and stuff. So, but a lot of people cannot capitalize on it, cannot, so do you think, Kiwi, that we need to have like an entrance level people who is doing art, basically, because just a lot of people is doing it right now, and instead of like focusing on art, which is a good thing, I'm not against it, they might also want to focus on other stuff, and I gotta find themselves more productive, because it seems like this art thing, like culinary, at the same time, it's like, more and more people are looking at those young YouTubers, and they want to replicate, and obviously it's going to be an experience, but again, if it's not going to bring you off at the end, so what's the point? So what I'm trying to approach this problem, it's like, it's A, experience, or B, money, and this entrance level to art in any form. What do you think?
I have a big take on this, but go ahead, Bree, you answer first.
What I hate about anything where people perform is elitism, and I don't think that anything should be exclusive for a certain level of skill, or for any kind of people, basically. So I'm an advocate for that anybody can do art and start art and feel like an artist, because I've had a really tough time calling myself an artist, because I always felt like, well, that's kind of arrogant thing to say of yourself. Like, what qualifies you to call yourself an artist? But if you feel like one, and if you do art, then you are an artist. And basically, what it comes down to, whether you can monetize it or not, is the passion you have for it. And if you don't have enough passion and willpower to see it through, then sooner or later you will get to the level, well, I guess it's just a hobby for me, which is also fine. And I don't believe that any time you spend on something is wasted time. because you can always learn and gain something from it. So, but yeah, it's really hard to make money with art nowadays because the market is so vast and there are so many people doing it. But still, I would encourage anybody, if you want to go for it, just try it.
Right.
Okay, here's my take on that. So this is like, I've been thinking a lot about this. So this, if we're going to categorize this subject, it's about work in general and going into the future, what work looks like. But it also ties into things we talked about earlier. So I started imagining this idea, right? A lot of people hate their work. And I mean, not the stuff that they create themselves, but the fact that they have to work for another person in order to live. So I started to think, right? Everybody has their own interests, and we know this. And it takes, of course, it takes time, especially as you grow, to develop that interest and really hone in on it, craft it, make it perfect it. So, but at the same time, we also have something like cryptocurrency. Now, the idea of cryptocurrency, even though it's struggling right now to reach, a lot of people, still it's starting to pick up. At least more people know about it now. They understand it. And the reason why the idea is so powerful is because it would replace the current global system, the current global monetary system. Now, there's a lot of, we could go all sorts of ways with the discussion of that. But what I want to discuss is the idea of people's creations as a currency, right? So let's think about it. Imagine a world where when you create an art piece, it starts with an initial value. And we're already starting to creep into this with NFTs, right? Everybody can create anything they want. And as soon as you make it, it has a value. Now, you can trade it with anybody else's thing, and it's all up to the other person and how much they value it, right? And that's essentially the idea of art. I might make something, and to me it's a masterpiece, and then somebody else might be, oh, that's terrible. And then another guy might be like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So by exchanging art as a currency, that could be a whole nother way that people can sustain themselves, right? If I made like 3 pieces in a day and they're all valued at this, this, and this, maybe somebody who grows food would be like, oh, you know what? I have a lot of food and I need some more art. Let's trade. Here, I'll give you this many potatoes for your piece. And, it's people, again, this idea is still kind of, untapped, or I'm not going into details, but I think you guys get what I'm saying.
But we have had this idea in the past before money, essentially paper money or golden money was created. It's bargaining. We were trading.
That's right.
Animals for fruits, or for clothes.
And that's exactly my point. The idea has been around for thousands of years. It's basically since the beginning of humankind. But we're now reaching a point where access to money is becoming restricted, even though there's supposedly an abundance, right? The government can print as much money as it wants, but because of the way things are valued, it gets skewed so that people with more money get more money and people with less money get less. So this would be somewhat of an evening out. And I think that's the idea behind cryptocurrency. I don't know enough about it, and hopefully we'll get a guest who can explain, we could probably talk to Bill again, maybe, see what he's doing.
Right. But I just don't like the idea of supervision that we currently have, and it's just getting more and more restricted, especially in the areas like here in China, which is currently fighting against cryptocurrency, and they want to replace by their digitalized yuan, and to me it's like even Russian banks, if you like. My father just told me, if I'm gonna give you like a straight payment for your school, they might block my account, then call me and ask what I'm doing, and it's only like $2,000, just insane. It's like they have so much control over us. That's why bargaining in terms of I'm gonna trade this goat for this, axe or wherever. This mind, it's crazy, but government is not involved in that process. It was not involved in that, and now basically, going into the future, we're gonna see more and more involvement, basically in all operations, everything. Now you in Europe, you cannot buy a car, a house. In America, in Russia, probably the same. Now you can bring like a bunch of cash, but it still would be suspicious. It's gonna get marked. So I mean, a lot of people who are abusing it, right? But again, with this digitalized system, more and more people are going to be finding a way to escape that, right? To find how to sneak, how to trade, because that's in human nature. We just don't like to be controlled. And the self-censorship, but it's for another topic. I'm just gonna leave it with that. Yeah, but it was a beautiful podcast. I'm feeling like, we've covered pretty much everything, right?
Yeah, but I'm not done. I'm not done with my point. Hold on. I just want to make it clear. I think that's where a lot of these conspiracies are coming from also, right? Because we have a push from people who are struggling to change the system in the way that it operates. And a lot of them, even if they have legitimate points, are being labeled as conspiracy theorists. And so when that happens, they're like, look, this is what the government is doing because they have their system already set up, which puts us down. And we're trying to reverse it. And they're doing everything they can to limit us. And so they're using their experience trying to change things as like, oh, the government is doing this and this and this. So it's like, again, misinformation, but there is always a bit of legitimacy in all things, right? Now, the way it's presented is not always the best way, and you got certain types of people who just communicate in ways that make you think, oh, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, he's just crazy. But if you think about it, again, the banks do control a lot of what we do, right? Just like he said, you can't get a loan for a house without credit, and the only way to build credit is to buy into the whole global monetary system. Yeah. And people who are trying to change that don't like that system. They think there's a more fair way to do it. So these are the things, I leave you to think about, Bree, and if you have any final thoughts, go ahead.
About the whole crypto thing, I really don't know nearly well enough to express an opinion about that. Only that it's really confusing to me because it's a whole new construct, and so I guess a lot of people will feel the same as I, just being really suspicious about it and just inherently confused about it because it's like a new thing and differs so much from the system that we've known for such a long time now.
Right.
Exactly.
So okay,
a lot of thoughts, a
lot of things to think about, and that's exactly what this podcast is about. It's about discussion, right. It's about thinking about new ideas, and it's about sharing them with people who you may have never talked to before, because there is some value in that. So, thank you so much, Bree, for coming on. I think it's clear how happy, I am about that you came, and as Fedor said, we need to, get back in contact with some other people who we've already talked to. So
definitely.
You'll be high on our list.
Give me like 6 months or so, and then I'll come back and tell you all about how my journey as a self-employed artist has gone so far. Hopefully, it's going to be good news. But
right.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'll be putting throughout the video, I'll be putting in some images of your art. If you like, send me whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll let people see it.
Yeah.
2 or 3 people who watch will get to see it.
Shout out to the two or three people who watch. Thank you for watching.
My mom is like, yeah, that's me.
My mom cannot speak English, but it's fine, I'm gonna teach you. All right, guys, thanks very much, Kiwi, and
thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.